Welcome to the latest edition of the High Pressure Podcast. My name is Jeff Beamish. I'm an air quality meteorologist at Sonoma Technology in the San Francisco Bay Area.
And my name is Patrick Zahn. I am the lead air quality forecaster at Sonoma Technology.
My name is Steve Irwin. I'm an air quality meteorologist with Sonoma Technology.
And today we are starting a new series on the High Pressure Podcast called the Weekly Air Quality Discussion. What we are going to do is take a look at air quality across the country and talk about the meteorological factors that are influencing air quality levels across the United States. So, for the first installment of the weekly air quality discussion, we'll take a look at the national map for airnow.gov. You can see the current air quality map on the left side of your screen here for April 21st. Fairly quiet across much of the United States, save for the southwestern corner of the US, down to the desert southwest. Scrolling down a little bit further, the highest AQI locations as of this recording, with hazardous air quality levels in portions of Arizona and unhealthy for sensitive groups air quality levels in portions of California. So we'll dive right in and show you exactly what is going on and what is causing air quality to be diminished in those spots. I want to point out on the surface map here, the area of low pressure, the red L that you see, well-defined area of low pressure over southern Nevada and some gusty winds associated with that surface level system. And in the upper levels of the atmosphere, we have an upper level low that's spinning over Nevada and Utah at this time, with the upper level flow coming out of the southwest. And same thing at the lower levels of the atmosphere. Down at the surface, very gusty winds at this time out of the southwest, gusting as high as 35 to 36 miles per hour around the Tucson metropolitan area. So, how does this all equate to air quality? A lot of dust getting kicked up. And, gentlemen, I'll let you chime in here as I pull up the AirNow Tech map with the latest PM10 levels in southern Arizona.
Just wanted to mention really quick that what we're seeing here is on AirNow Tech Navigator. This tool shows the hourly concentration data, and this is for PM10. Those are large particles. So when Jeff was showing the top 10 sites earlier, those were AQI levels. This is a little bit different, but they're basically color-coded to indicate the AQI levels for this parameter. So you're seeing PM10 concentrations here up over 800 in some parts. And Jeff, if you go back an hour, I think you'll actually see even higher concentrations. Try one more. I saw some concentrations, yeah, over 1,000 micrograms for PM10. So the AQI is based on a 24-hour average, but we can get a sense of the AQI levels looking at the hourly concentrations. And these are remarkably high. This is not a really uncommon event, though, especially for this time of year when we have gusty winds associated with an upper level low pressure system over the desert southwest. Lots of dry, sandy terrain, and it kicks up the dust and creates these high AQI level events for particles.
Yeah, I just want to jump in here really quick because I have extensive knowledge of the weather down in the desert Southwest. And as you said, this is a very typical pattern. During the springtime, as the winter rains are over with, the soils are drying out, you get very strong winds. And this area between Tucson and Phoenix, that is a dust storm, a dust hotspot right along Interstate 10 here between Tucson up to Casa Grande and into metropolitan Phoenix. Very barren land, not a lot of terrain barriers to block out some of that PM10, some of that dust. And that's why I have these very high levels here on April 21st. I want to go ahead and pull up a couple of webcam images. This is from the 5151 East Broadway building. This is Midtown Tucson looking to the south, and you'll note that there is a little bit of dust off on the southern horizon. This would be just south of Tucson around Green Valley and Salrita. And then up toward Phoenix, this is the Estrella Mountains as of 3:15 p.m. on April 21st. And Steve, I'll bring you in real quick here. From the Estrella Mountains, this is north of Phoenix downtown, and very, very hazy, and particles getting kicked up with that wind.
Yeah, Jeff, with all your experience living out in that part of the country, I was just wondering what actions do folks normally take when these dust storms occur out there?
Well, it certainly depends on the synoptic setup, the weather setup, that is. In situations like this, I think that the action items that are put in place by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality is sending out high pollution advisories. I believe a day in advance if they know a system like this is going to kick in and produce air quality levels that are unhealthy for sensitive groups or higher. And I'll show you the forecast here for Arizona in just one moment. The other difference and why it depends on the weather setup is that um, you do get dust storms at the onset of the Arizona monsoon, the seasonal shift in winds where that pulls in moisture and thunderstorms develop. Outflow winds from the thunderstorms kick up a ton of dust. It becomes very dense. And again, that area between Tucson and Phoenix, Steve, a dust storm hotspot. And the messaging there, they have implemented new signage. And I believe they are implementing or have implemented a camera system to keep tabs on the interstate and to warn drivers of what is happening and to stay abreast to the changing situation.
Especially because of low visibility, right, Jeff?
Yeah, low visibility, and what they tell folks is to pull aside, stay alive. Yeah, that is such a dangerous area. And especially at the onset of the monsoon, that's the driest time of year in Arizona. I'm going to go ahead and show you the air quality forecast for the Tucson metropolitan area. Um, During that time of year, right as the monsoon is getting going, right around 4th of July, maybe a week or two after, that's when the soils are the driest. That's when those outflow thunderstorm winds can be very strong and kick up copious amounts of dust. And Steve, just wheeling back to something you were talking about, here's one of the notices right here that they put out on their website for the Wednesday forecast. Notice blowing dust possible. And you'll see here they had in the forecast hourly between 2 and 6 p.m. here on April 21st. They were forecasting unhealthy for sensitive groups AQI levels for PM10 for dust. Steve, Patrick, I'll open the floor to you with any additional comments on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out this is a really nice website from the agency providing the forecast, not just for the 24-hour average, but providing these hourly forecasts, and not just for PM10, but you see ozone there. And if you scroll down, you can also see PM 2.5. And it also provides a multi-day forecast. So if you scroll back up, you can go use the tabs at the top to go forward in time, and you can get those hourly forecasts for subsequent days. You can see if, what was that, Sunday? That the main issue on Sunday appears to be ozone instead of particles. And this is something that we'll talk about later in ozone season, but that's really a midday phenomenon when ozone levels peak. So yeah, situation changing from day to day, but right now it is a PM10 kind of day.
Yeah, it is. And just moving forward very quickly in the forecast, because I know we have lots of other things to talk about. By the way, Patrick, it's hashtag ozone season. We want to make sure that we get that right for the social media. Hashtag ozone season,
Okay.
SZN. All right, I
All right, I
digress.
got it.
I'll digress. All right, so what's going to happen? This is what the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality is forecasting. Looks like PM10 levels dropping off into the moderate range for Thursday. By Friday, good air quality levels for PM10. But as you mentioned, ozone starting to creep up in and around the Tucson area, and more than likely the Phoenix metropolitan area as well. I'll show you. Lastly, the wind's really decreasing. This is windy.com, the bottom panel here. This is a wind forecast. And right here, this vertical axis, this shows different models in the wind forecast for the Tucson metropolitan area. And you can see the winds are dying down, temperatures more than likely going to be increasing, sunny skies as well. And that is going to really aid ozone development as we're heading into the weekend down in southern Arizona.
So shifting gears a little bit, I'm going to be focusing on a different part of the country. Right now I'm looking at AirNow Tech Navigator, and I'm just showing the current PM 2.5 concentrations, which aren't too high. There's really not anything noteworthy if you're just looking at the concentrations here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the fire detections on, and through the magic of satellite detections, we can try to understand what's happening in terms of fires throughout the continent and into Mexico, Cuba. I want to go to yesterday actually because that has a more complete set of fire detections. Give it a second to load here. There is a lot of burning going on. A lot of this has to do with agricultural burns. They're burning off vegetation, dead brush, a lot of fires happening, especially in Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. And we are not immune to the effects of burning in Mexico when we're talking about air quality in the US. So I'm going to be focusing on the Gulf region and the air quality in Louisiana and Texas as a result of these fires. So, like I said, right now it's not a huge problem, but I'm going to show you the wind forecast coming up. So, the situation right now is that there's surface high pressure sort of centered over Kansas. Now, as I go forward, that surface high is going to shift to the east. And as that happens, the winds are going to shift back around to southeasterly. That means coming from the southeast, going towards the northwest. This is looking at Friday, and I'm going to go into Friday midday. So now the situation has really changed. We went from having surface high pressure up here in Kansas to now a low pressure system developing over Texas with the surface high way out off the east coast. And because of that, the winds through the Gulf will be from the south southeast. And what that's going to do is bring smoke from the western Gulf into Texas and Louisiana. Now, I want to go back to Navigator and show you a little bit more information here. There's this product called Aerosol Optical Depth. It's a measure of the amount of aerosols in the atmospheric column. That means the entire atmosphere, looking down from a satellite. And again, we're looking at yesterday's images, but I just wanted to show you the red detections here. And let me take off the fires. The red detections here show a lot of aerosols over the southwestern Gulf. That indicates a lot of smoke from the fires, and that's just sitting out there over the Gulf. And as those winds shift to south-southeasterly on Friday, that's going to bring that smoke right into Texas and the southwestern corner of Louisiana. And I wanted to focus on the forecast from TCEQ. That's the agency forecasting air quality for Texas. And they give a really nice, they have a nice table of the air quality forecast for the entire state. But if you scroll down, you can see in their discussion, if I go to Friday's discussion, they do call out that patchy smoke from agricultural burning in Mexico and Central America. It's expected to increase over South Texas while expanding northward. So the forecasters there are anticipating smoke impacts in Texas. They've bumped up their PM forecast to moderate, the moderate AQI levels in a lot of those areas. And also, we forecast for Louisiana. And when I submitted the forecast this morning, I did issue a moderate forecast for Friday in about half the cities in Louisiana, really focused in the western half of Louisiana. That's where we think most of the transport is going to go. So again, those winds are going to carry smoke from the Gulf inland into Louisiana and Texas. So we're expecting moderate particle levels there late in the week. Jeff or Steve, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think, Patrick, that it's a little counterintuitive. I think most of us in the public, when we think of sea breeze, I grew up in Southern California, and the sea breeze was always a refreshing thing that happened. The cool air would come in from the Pacific, and you kind of think clean air as well coming in from the ocean. And so this is counterintuitive in that, it's going to be a nice ocean breeze coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, but it's actually bringing poor air quality into Texas and Louisiana. And so that's one of the big challenges for us as air quality forecasters to get the message out that, just because we're having a sea breeze today doesn't mean that we can keep our guard down with air quality impacts.
That raises another great point, which is oftentimes a particular region will experience hazy conditions. They'll see a lot of smog or particles in their air, and it's not immediately clear where that is coming from. And so that's why the forecast that agencies issue can really shed light on what's happening with the air quality. A lot of times the sources aren't nearby. It's not a local fire, or it might not be locally generated ozone. It might come from far away. It could be hundreds or even thousands of miles.
The other difficult thing too, that we know about here at Sonoma Technology when forecasting for the state of Louisiana, There are obviously no air quality monitors over the Gulf of Mexico, so we're not necessarily sure, just to what degree what the concentrations are for smoke that has been lingering in the Gulf of Mexico. On top of that, the other thing we have to sometimes watch out for in the Gulf of Mexico too, when making a forecast for Louisiana, is considering some of the gas flaring happening on the oil rigs that dot all around the Gulf of Mexico. And those aren't easily detected by satellites because they are very small scale, but they do end up having a pretty big impact on air quality at the end of the day.
All right. So as Jeff mentioned, it is ozone season. That's a busy season around Sonoma Technology as forecasting heats up and as temperatures heat up over the country heading through late spring here and into the summer. And I'm just going to go ahead and switch over to the current air quality map.
And Steve, while you do that, I'll be your filler here while you're doing it. So here I am on our podcast talking about, we got to use hashtag ozone season. And then I make a GIF that actually doesn't have the hashtag in it. So -5 cool points for me today.
But that is an accurate portrayal of how jazzed we get about ozone season.
It really is, yes.
It's exciting.
Cheesy ties and everything.
Now today, not that exciting. So this is a picture from Air Now Tech. Again, we were just looking at AQI levels due to fine particles, but now shifting gears over into ozone. As we're looking at the map countrywide today, there are a few spots in Arizona where it's warmer. In addition to the dust, they're also having some ozone down there. But if you look at the majority of the country right now, air quality is good for ozone. And we're getting into late April now, and you would think, well, maybe we should be seeing more ozone across the country. What's going on? And so if we think about what creates ozone, we must be missing one of the ingredients, right? So ozone forms in the presence of sunlight. That's one key ingredient. And another key component is that hotter temperatures help the reactions happen faster to create ozone. So you normally need sun and you need warmth to create ozone. And so if we look at the current satellite picture across the country, there are quite a few clouds across the Northeast and also across the Rockies today, but not so much that it would limit ozone a lot. And so we can then transition over. This is just the National Weather Service's Weather and Hazards Data Viewer. And this shows the hazards and warnings across the country currently. And so we can see the issues with wind over the southwest. But as we look east, we see purples and blues and some browns. And what those are indicating in those blue shades are frost advisories, freeze warnings. Right now, the country is experiencing much below normal temperatures. And so if we switch over to the Weather Bell website here, they have some very nice maps that show average temperatures and comparing those to what we normally would see at this time of year. And as we look at this map today, you can see that temperatures are running anywhere from 5 to as much as 20 degrees below normal for this time of year. And that's due to that high pressure system that Patrick was referring to. It brought a lot of cold air south from Canada, and the whole country right now, except for the far west, is experiencing much below normal temperatures. And just picking a place out, we can look at Oklahoma City. They're expecting a high of 56 today and lows in the 30s tomorrow morning. And so it makes sense that we're missing that key component of ozone. That heat that we would normally have in the spring is missing. But as we wrap up this podcast, as we're looking ahead into the next several days and weeks, we can see that trend is going to reverse, especially across Texas and Oklahoma into the desert Southwest. That expands into Southern California the first week of May, and then also along the eastern seaboard that first week of May. And this is the European model looking out at weekly average temperatures. And so we generally see a warming trend coming up over the next couple of weeks here. And if we look at the forecast from the European model, Oklahoma City, 56 today, However, by early next week, back in the low 80s, much more normal conditions. And so we would expect as that warming occurs, we will probably see a rebound in ozone, especially across the southern and southwestern portions of the country. And things will get a little more busy for us air quality forecasters.
Steve, I have a question for you because you have some experience forecasting ozone east of the Rockies, specifically in Minnesota. And talk about your experience, especially into April and May when you're forecasting ozone in places where one day it can be in the 50s, the next day it could be in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, it is. It's tricky. Number one, just from a forecasting standpoint, I think t- models don't often do very well when they're trying to forecast rare events, and this is a rare event when you're this far below normal, and so sometimes forecast models can't get a very good handle on sometimes how good the air quality could be on a certain day. But then as you make that transition to the warm, I think for us, it was more of an issue with messaging and getting the word out to the public, because when you're just coming off of a stretch of cold weather, nobody's really thinking about ozone that comes with warm temperatures. In Minnesota, everybody's happy. It's just, above 50 degrees and you can put your shorts on and go outside and enjoy it. And a lot of people aren't thinking ozone, but we do get some ozone up there in Minnesota this time of year, and that's exacerbated by seasonal burning that can be happening south of Minnesota across the Central Plains. And so it's something we as forecasters had to be cognizant of even during this time of year, and then trying to get that message out to the public and to the folks who are susceptible to um, health concerns from air quality, that they would get that message in a timely fashion and be able to plan accordingly.
Steve, it's also worth mentioning that we forecast for the state of Delaware for their ozone season, which is May through September. And based on the graphic that you showed earlier with the temperatures increasing along the eastern seaboard there the first couple days in May, it looks like we're going to be hitting the ground running with our ozone forecast there. So we're going to be paying really close attention to the weather conditions, the temperatures, and wind speeds, wind directions as we start forecasting for them just in a few days.
Yeah, it looks like, especially as we head into that first end of the month here in the first week of May, it should start heating up out there. So definitely something we'll have to keep an eye on.
And one really important thing that I just thought of, that air quality agencies don't necessarily forecast ozone year round for the reasons that Steve laid out. With warmer temperatures, sunshine, daylight increasing as you get into April, May, June, July, and so on. Not all air quality agencies forecast ozone year round. And I know, Patrick, with our experience, we have some areas where we do. We have other areas where we cut it, like for instance, Delaware, where we start in May and we wrap it up at the end of September.
Right, it's up to the agency, but they try to base it on those periods when they've seen higher ozone. So those months are usually, April or May through September or October. There are rare wintertime ozone events. We can talk about that as we see it maybe in a future podcast. But yeah, it's up to the agency to decide when they're going to forecast ozone.
So that does it for our weekly air quality discussion. This is something we're going to be implementing with the High Pressure Podcast in the coming weeks and months. We certainly appreciate you watching and listening. Of course, if you want to find out more about some of the amazing work that we do at Sonoma Technology, you can head to our website, sonomatech.com. And of course, the High Pressure Podcast, we are on social media on Twitter at High Pressure Pod. I'm Jeff Beamish.
I'm Patrick Zahn.
And I'm Steve Irwin.
Thanks for watching and listening to the latest edition of the High Pressure Podcast.